Hello, hello, and welcome, folks, to our latest Changing Work Collective LinkedIn Live. We are covering Embarking on Conscious Business Journey, Triumphs, Challenges, and Practical Insights. I'm here with some of my favorite people in the whole wide world, and I'll introduce them, or I'll let them introduce themselves. First up, Scott Shute, co-founder of Changing Work.
Hey, good to be with you.
Thanks for being here,
me.
Scott. That's it. That's all you get. We got Amy Serene as well, head of programs and operations. Say hello.
Hello, hello. Excited to be here.
Thanks for being here, Amy. And Trisha Livermore, our Changing Work events manager.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here.
So this is going to be, I hope, really an informal, informational, and entertaining conversation. All of us are basically building our own conscious business journey as we speak. And part of what I hope to convey to folks as they're thinking about their own conscious business journey is that it's an imperfect process, and it is in fact a journey, not necessarily a destination. And we're going to get into the questions here in a little bit. Luckily, we have Trisha here to help us keep on track and ask some hard-hitting questions. But if you are live with us, we have an opportunity for a chat. Feel free to drop in questions into the LinkedIn Live there, and we can hopefully bring your questions up. And we'll go ahead and get started. Trisha, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks. It's so lovely to be here with all of you. I'm going to start with Scott. So I'm just curious, as when this was a concept in your mind, why was building a conscious business important to you?
Sure. Well, it combines two of the things that I've been that are deeply me. Part of it is being at work. So I was an executive. I led a big team, ultimately at LinkedIn. The other part of me is kind of on my own journey, my spiritual journey, starting as a 13-year-old, having a contemplation practice, and later starting to teach that type of work since I was in college, and bringing these two things together, partly because of who I am, but partly because I've seen it in action. I was at LinkedIn in a really amazing time when we had I felt like we were living these ideals, and it wasn't perfect, but it was the best place I'd ever been. We had a CEO who was out in the world talking about compassion. We had an executive coach, Fred Kaufman, who literally wrote the book on conscious business, working with the team. And those things were cascading through the organization in a way that created a place that was pretty magical to work at. And I thought, well, I want that feeling to be something that everybody has when they go to work. And as part of, I knew I wanted to build a business with other people because I can't change the world by myself. I wanted it to be something that we all do together. And as we're building it together, it should be the ideal as well, right? We should be building a conscious business as we're helping other people expand their own consciousness and build conscious businesses. So that was kind of the start.
Yeah, that magical place to work feels pretty inspiring to want to build that together. Nick, I'm going to go over to you. So what about building a conscious business brought you and Scott to co-found this community?
Yeah, the perennial question. I think, Scott and I had basically, I think, been dancing around the same general circles for a few years. We had really the fortunate benefit of collaborating together on a project when I was working at Google, helping to scale some of the mindfulness programs within that company. Got a chance to bring Scott in and do some train the trainer work and to help kind of facilitate the growth of that program over the pandemic. But I had actually rubbed elbows with him before in other domains. I think we were both part of the MBA program. I had just seen him out in the world on LinkedIn. And when I got laid off back in, what was it, January of 2023 now, one of the first things I thought about was like, who do I want to align myself with? What kind of work do I want to do now? After 13 years working in big tech, what do I actually want to fill my cup with? And there was a short list of people. Scott was like one of the first people that I reached out to. And we started having conversations around like what we're actually trying to do out there in the world. And there's a lot of synergy. There's a lot of overlap of both the ways in which we were trying to do work out there and the philosophies behind it. And similar to what Scott was saying, it was like, well, if we're both going to do this, like, why not do it together? And if we're both going to do it, why not bring as many people along with us as we possibly can? And that was what kind of birthed the Changing Work Collective. But I think, in a really concrete way, for me, it's at this phase of my life and this phase of my career. To me, impact is one of the most important things, and purpose. So, if we're going to fill our days with something, what do we fill our days with? And for me, the question that kept coming up is like, I want to help people at scale. I also had the opportunity of being with some really amazing teams and some really amazing leaders. And I had the opportunity of being with some really poor teams, some really poor leaders. And since I got laid off, I've talked to literally hundreds of people that have had these similar experiences. And time again, it's the leadership where people fall short. And that's what spins people out of a team or creates these scenarios where maybe they have a bitter taste in their mouth about corporations or organizations. And it doesn't have to be that way. So for me, like the mission that I have is, at a very high level to alleviate human suffering at scale. But the ways in which I am hoping to do that is help people where they're at. And most people are at work. So let's start there. Let's try to make work a better place for people to be where they can actually thrive and see the ripple effect from there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And, and I think what drew me to changing work is that impact and purpose. Like, how do we do this together? Like you both said, like, how do we bring the most amount of people together to build something that's a magical place to be and help people at scale? So thank you for that, Nick. Amy, I'm coming over to you next. So what aspects of building a conscious business drew you into working with Scott and Nick? Because I think you've sort of been there from the get-go.
Yeah, I think we're coming up on a year almost here. It was really interesting timing. I was also impacted by the layoffs. The company I worked for did them very early. And I had no idea how many companies were going to be doing such significant layoffs thereafter. So I feel like I watched that wave and I watched the impact that had on people. I felt the impact on my own personal and professional experience. And I feel like I've run the gamut with working with people who are very highly conscious leaders and those on the other end of the spectrum. And through those experiences, I've seen how that has affected me as a human being. I've seen how that coincides alongside my own personal healing journey that I've been on. And I always felt like those were two very separate parts of me. And so when I started talking with Scott and Nick last year about what they wanted to build, I was just like, oh my gosh, is this the bridge? Like, is this the thing? Or do we get to take the inner work of who we are as people and how we grow and expand and heal, and then how we show up in the workplace and how we share that with other people? And that hooked me right from the get-go. And I had very serendipitous timing and space and ability to be able to decide what I wanted to spend some really significant and really impactful time working on. And the two of them, if you haven't already met them, some of the most extraordinary people I've met. And it's brought people like you, Trisha, into the fold. We've got some really wonderful human beings who have raised their hand and who are so excited about this. And just that idea of being able to work in a space, building something, learning together, growing together, and going through all of the comfortable and uncomfortable parts of that, and having space to have those kinds of conversations isn't something that the majority of my career incorporated. And so being able to do that now with all of you and being able to help other people find their way to that just feels like a really, really good way to spend my time.
I love what you said about it being the bridge of inner work and showing up at work to share with other people. And like, how do we really show up as our full selves at work? And it's been a lot of fun to be able to do that in a place that is open and conscious and thoughtful and collaborative. So it's been wonderful. Thank you. So, and Mike agrees that, work is where people are at, especially if we're going to scale. So appreciate that comment, Mike. I'm going to go back to some basics as well. Like, how was the name Changing Work determined? Like, what was your thinking behind that? What was important about that for you?
Well, a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I changed jobs at work. I had been a volunteer for our mindfulness program at LinkedIn for a long time. I was executive sponsor of it. And then I turned it into a full-time gig. And when I made that change, it was really a shift in career for me. I'd been a VP of operations, and now I was the head of mindfulness, essentially. And so I changed my tagline on LinkedIn to changing work from the inside out, which was my tagline. It was my mission in life. It's still my mission in life. And so that's kind of the origin of it. It started with that kernel a long time ago. And then the idea is just that. You know, we could be spending our time in lots of different ways, whether it's impacting the political system or the educational system, or pick a thing. For us, because we have experience in the workplace, we believe that this is where our efforts can be used. I believe that workplaces, big companies, are shaping consciousness for their employees in ways that governments and religions have been doing for thousands of years. Because if you start at a big company, you have to fit in. You have to fit into how they do things. That's essentially the way you have to fit into their consciousness. So imagine a world where we could actually make change through the workplace, through managers, through leaders, through policies, through everything that they did. That is a massive way of changing the world into a better place. So it's for me, it's about where I'm spending my time in advancing humanity. How about that?
Beautiful. Yeah, I didn't realize that was your tagline, so that's really wonderful. And I'm curious if that tagline of changing work from the inside out helped you define your mission. So I'm just curious about like your personal mission, how you created Changing Work's mission.
Yeah. Nick, you want to take that one?
Yeah, well, I could definitely speak to that a little bit. And I think so much of the work that we're doing, at least in my opinion, it's about the work that we're doing within ourselves as well. You know, when you show up as a leader, when you show up as even an individual contributor, if you show up in the world in any capacity whatsoever, you know, it's really easy to point a finger at other people and say, like, what are you doing to change this? Like, what are you doing to help? And it's much harder to turn the lens on yourself and say, well, what am I doing? What's the work that I'm doing to make the world a better place? And one of the things that I learned over and over and over again is, like, you can shake fists at clouds all you want. You can demand change from others. But if you're not actually working on the change yourself internally, there's just really no hope, you know, I think, for anything beyond that. I mean, maybe you'll get lucky and the change will occur. But, you know, if you really want to affect change at scale, and if you really want to have an impact on the world, you got to start within. So for me, this personal journey of doing this inner work and then trying to figure out ways to expand that out to other people and to invite other people in on this journey, that to me is what it means to change work from the inside out. So it's very embedded for me on a personal mission and a personal, like, purpose in how I show up in the world.
Yeah, there's a Rumi quote. You know, we can't get through any of these if I don't share a Rumi quote or a Hafiz quote.
Do you happen to have a Rumi quote, Scott?
I usually do. Maybe not always, but usually. One of my favorites is Rumi says, well, maybe I forgot it now that I under pressure. Rumi says, yesterday I was clever and I tried to change the world, but today I'm wise and I'm working on changing myself. And so this is, both parts of that are true. Mm-hmm. Yes, we want to change the world, but we do that by changing ourselves, right? And if we can be part of the movement that encourages everybody to look within, to change themselves, then that is how we change the world. That is how we change work.
Beautiful. I love Rumi. It's one of my favorites. So what's this thing? What's cake all about? Like, can someone explain cake, please?
All right, who wants that one?
Amy, you want to jump in on that?
Sure. So cake is delicious, first of all, and whether you're a vegan or you're good, no, I'm just kidding. But yes, cake is it's our value proposition. It's the community, the amplification, the knowledge sharing, and the effervescence. And when we think of who we are and how we are existing and building as a collective and an organization, we want to touch on each and every one of those facets, because all of those pieces are very important to the holistic elements of what changing work is. And underneath each of those letters, there's so many opportunities. And if you're in the collective already, or if you're aware of just how many projects and pieces we have that are bubbling to the surface and how many ideas are brewing with people who want to get involved, it's because one of those letters really jumps out to them. and they feel called to it, because changing work, right, and anything that we do from the inside out, it's going to be a different way in for everybody. And I think that's what's so beautiful about changing work as a whole, is that there's the right opportunity, there's the right letter in the cake for every single person. And it's just about finding that for you. And Scott or Nick, if you want to elaborate a little bit more, please.
Well, just to talk about each one in a little more detail, the C for cake is community. And I think this is our unique value proposition, right? There's a lot of trainings, there's a lot of things that happen. But one of the beautiful things is we've attracted a certain type of person, right? We say we're like-hearted. We're like-minded, yes, but we're really like-hearted. And so it's like walking into a virtual room. It's like, oh, you can relax. Like, here are my people. So community. A is amplification. Amplification of conscious business practices, leaders who are doing it, but also, if this is what they want, amplification of each person's individual work. So I see that Earl and Mike are with us. Earl and Mike are both consultants in this work, doing the work of leadership training, doing the work of Enneagram building, and neuro-linguistic programming, all of these things. We want to amplify the work that they are doing as individuals. And for us, when we talk about changing work, we know we can't do it by ourselves. So we want to amplify the people that we're aligned with. We want to amplify the folks that are doing the work, whether they are a practitioner, a coach, or a consultant, or whether they're a leader. Right? We want to tell the stories of the leaders who are doing this work so that this becomes the norm. We want it to be out in the consciousness of everyone that this is just how you do business. Then the K part is knowledge. We want to build our own skill sets, whether that's becoming a better consultant, whether that's becoming a better leader. We want to codify what it means to be a conscious business, or what it means to be a conscious leader, and make it easy for a leader or a practitioner to do those things. So you'll see, as an example, we're writing a book together, which will come out in September. That book will have 25 lessons of how to be a more self-aware leader. We'll have the Changing Work Review, which is a series of articles. And you'll probably see things like 7 ways to deepen your, blah, blah, blah. So over time, all this knowledge just becomes, hopefully, not a new thing, but the way things are done. And then E is, we needed to make cake, and we had CAK, so E. But what we came up with is effervescence and collective effervescence. Our friend Dr. Keltner, who wrote the book on awe, talks about one of the pathways to awe is collective effervescence. And how I interpret that is we create this magical container and put in it amazing people and love and structure. And then amazing things happen that we could not predict. And that's that effervescence, that sparkle that happens. And we're already seeing it in new friendships or new business or new ideas that have taken hold just because this container exists. So that is the value proposition of cake. And like Amy said, there's something for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. And I think cake is what drew me in. I kept getting this nudge, like, hey, go look at this, go look at this. And as soon as I got on the platform and I looked at cake and I'm like, I'm in, I'm all in. Like, how do I get involved? I want to be here. I want to be with my people.
Cake is so addictive.
It is so addictive.
Well, and dare we actually say that it is the E that has created where we are today, right? It's the effervescence of all of us coming together and being here on LinkedIn Live together, having this very conversation.
Yes, yeah, and we all got to meet each other. Well, I got to meet the 3 of you in Wisdom 2.0 just a few weeks ago. So that was lovely effervescence as well, just being able to meet in person. So, startups are not an easy thing to create sometimes. They're rather unpredictable. Not really sure what we're creating, how it's going to work. So I'm just curious, like, what are the strategies that are important to you while navigating the uncertainty of building a movement of changing work?
I love that question. Man, I think, there's a bunch of things that come up for me, but I think a lot of it underpins my understanding of what conscious business and conscious leadership even is. You think about the typical company, the typical organization is really mostly oriented around like generating profit for shareholders, in most cases. And I believe that there's a better way and there's a different way to actually go about doing things. And a big piece of that, I think, is stakeholder orientation, not just the shareholders, but everybody that's involved. So a lot of the conversations that we have on a regular basis, I mean, just in the way that we have our weekly calls or our one-on-one conversations, it's checking in, just seeing how we are. I got text messages from Scott and Amy earlier this morning, just like, hey, how you doing today? So just checking in, having that communication, having psychological safety, room to fail, room to experiment, I think are really big, important pieces to this. Transparency, I think, is another big key to this as well. Like, we're all trying to figure this out as we go. And I think one of the things that I really, really value, and I think even just, what was it, last night or something like that, Scott and I had a brief conversation, and not to blow you up, Scott, but, you were like, hey, I don't know, is this okay to share this? Is this appropriate for us to share based on our dynamic? And it's like, absolutely, this is appropriate to share. This is all part of the work that we're doing to try to figure this out together. And I think, what that does is, even though we're not quite sure what we're doing all the time, and we're experimenting with things and we're putting things out there, there's a safety in that. And there's a comfort in that, to know that everyone has each other's back. We're all aiming towards the same goal in mind. And we're trying to build something that's bigger than all of us. And I think that orientation, and always coming back to that over and over again in every different way that we do it, through text messages and through meetings and through the ways that we onboard new members like you, Trisha, or other folks that we're collaborating with, I feel like that's really what helps keep it all together for us. And, while, the journey might be a little confusing sometimes and the destination might not be completely clear, I don't know about all of you, but I'm having a hell of a lot of fun along the way doing it. And I think that, to me, is what really matters. One other last bit that I'll add into this too, and I think this is like a little inside joke that Amy and I have quite a bit. Often, almost every call we get off of with one another, there's a moment in time where one of us asks, like, so what do you want to keep doing this? Like, we're going to do this again tomorrow? Like, you want to keep showing up for this? And it's like, yeah, let's do this. Let's jump into this. And I think there's a bit of humor in there, and there's a bit of like enrollment that happens, I think, every single time. And it's almost like a declaration of, this is what matters and this is what we're doing, and we're committed to this. We're all in.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about is, this is how we learn. It's in some cases how we serve. This is how, we're trying to make the world a better place. In some case, well, this is definitely how we're working, because, we need to make a living. We need to make a business that helps not only us make a living, but hopefully the people who are on the journey with us as well. But it's also how we learn. So we are totally learning every day. And that transparency, we kind of go through the waves where I'll be having a bad day and Nick and Amy will pick me up, or Nick will be having a bad day and Amy and I will pick him up. It's somebody's always there. And luckily not all three of us usually are having a bad day at the same time. And it's that realization that this is life. Yeah. It's temporary, and we're choosing to do it. Like Nick said, hey, you want to do this again? You want to come back for this some more? It's like, yeah, okay. Even on the worst days, the answer is still yes. It's still yes.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw out a term, Nick, that you use all the time, is like, we're in permanent beta. And I love that. I come from a tech world where we use agile and all of that, but the permanent beta is just like, hey, let's just experiment with this. LinkedIn Live, this is just an experiment. We're going to see how it works. So it really offers a really great way to create creativity, co-creation, collaboration. And Scott, to your point, like, we get to learn every day, like something that we get to build and grow together, and it's been super fun. Amy,
the challenge. Sorry, one more bit on that. The challenge is to find both the structure and the freedom.
Yes.
Right, because when there's too much freedom, it creates chaos, and then we all get overwhelmed. And if there's too much structure, it stifles creativity. So the challenge is to find exactly the right amount of structure and freedom, which is an ongoing challenge.
Yeah.
Every day it's a challenge.
And I feel like Amy has a really big part in creating that structure and allowing the balance. And I'm curious, like, what are the practices that that you're putting in place to create that structure to allow for the creativity?
That's a good question. Thanks, Trisha. I think that, as you can see, right on this screen, this is the inner workings of changing work behind the scenes from an operational and day-to-day basis. And so we're in a startup mode, and a startup mode is a little bit scrappy, sometimes a little bit messy. It has the right structure, to Scott's point, at the right time. And we're constantly growing and evolving into the right structure. And that's actually been one of the questions that we keep asking ourselves is, what are the right types of structure to put into place? What are the right types of, profit share or revenue models, or like what are the things from an infrastructure perspective that are going to make this different, right? So that we can create those and set those into place, in a way that's going to allow us to continue to move forward in a good way, in a conscious way. And we're constantly iterating on those. And so we're in a place right now where we have a whole bunch of people that are involved in taking various levels of leadership in different projects and spearheading them. And so one of the big things that I needed to kind of click back and zoom out and look at was like, all right, what do I need to be able to create and support all of these people so that they have access to us, they have access to the resources that they need, and they have the tools that can help them to succeed? And then how much of a touch point do we need to have in all of these places to keep all of these pieces moving? And one of those things, right, is that we need to look at bandwidth across the board. And that's our biggest question right now, is like, how much time does it take for us to do the things that we want to do that align at the highest level with the overall mission and vision? And then how much of our time do we have to spend on each of those in order to do them really well? And so those are the questions that I'm asking, and those are the conversations that we're starting to get into, because all of a sudden we kind of peaked up and we realized, oh my gosh, we have so many people that want to get involved. So what do we need to do to be able to support and enable that? Hopefully that answered.
Yeah. And what I've learned from my volunteer work with Changing Work is it requires a significant amount of adaptability, flexibility, working with uncertainty, ambiguity, and creating the structure with you guys, right? Like, how do we want to do all of this together? And it's been a whole lot of fun. And I know we want to kind of hold this to 30 minutes. I'm just curious, maybe just from each of you, like, what's the greatest nugget or victory, or maybe hurdle that has been most profound in this last year for you? And I know that's probably a really deep question, but just like the one thing you've learned more than anything else through this experience so far.
Oh, I can hop in on that. For me, it's the power of community. It will always be that. I think over and over and over again, like, I come back to work every day, and the first things that I see are messages from collective members, messages from my colleagues, and that kind of community support, that community resilience that Scott and Amy were even mentioning earlier. Like, there's hard days. But I know, regardless of however hard a day I'm having, I've got this whole community of people behind me to support, to help provide answers, to help provide clarity and encouragement when things are hard. And I think that's the thing that I was missing most from my last few roles in big tech, was I didn't really feel that sense of community in that way, and that sense of collective or community resilience. And I think that's a really beautiful thing that isn't always a given. So yeah, I think that would be mine.
Thank you.
Amy?
Ask the question again, Trisha, because I just kind of got a little bit, I was feeling into what Nick was saying, and I want to make sure I come back to your question specifically.
So over this last year, what's the one big takeaway for you, whether it was a victory or hurdle, something that you've learned that's been that deeply resonated with you from this experience so far?
There's so many. Okay, if there's one, I think it's courage.
Mm.
What we're doing takes courage, not just in the courage to start and build a business from the ground up, but the courage to keep doing the inner work that is the work that's going to effectuate the change in the world that we want to see. And that all of it takes courage. And for me, that's been a really big lesson in my own personal life and professional life. And I can just sort of see it just exponentially expand out into everything that we're trying to do. All of it takes courage. And I don't think I realized how vital that ingredient was.
Beautiful.
Nice. For me, it's the continued journey from me to we, right? From ego to the we of the whole. Because all of us have inertia, inertia of what does it mean to win? What does it mean to be successful? What does it mean to strive? And I've done a lot of striving, and now we're building something, and I have all of that inertia, like, oh, here's how you do it. Here's how you strive. And then it's letting go to say, actually, it's not about me. Like, yes, it is about me, but me as part of the we, me in service of the whole, not me in service of myself. And every day there's usually something in that world that becomes another refining part of the lesson for me, of how do each one of us use our unique talents and skill set and history that we've built by striving for ourselves, but how do we do that in service of something bigger than ourselves? So the journey from me to we.
Yeah, that was super profound from each of you. The power of community, resilience, courage, how we effectuate change in the world from me to we, and doing something bigger than ourselves. Clearly, all of these things are how you embark on a conscious business journey. So I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to volunteer, because I'm super honored to be part of this community and be building something together with all of you.
Trisha, we're so glad you're part of the journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And one final thing, I was just thinking about our 3 lessons, and it's like the community to have courage to get to we.
Ooh, love that. Beautiful.
Ding, ding, ding.
Thank you so much, Trisha. Thanks, Scott and Nick, always, every day. Such a beautiful ride.
Thanks so much, folks. And thanks, Trisha, for hosting yet another great event.
Excellent. We'll
Thanks,
see you
friends.
soon.
And a quick call to action for folks too. So if you're interested, there was a little banner that popped up a couple times there. I don't know if maybe Yana's in the background. She can pop it up one more time. And there it is. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about what we're up to and what we're building at Changing Work, and if you'd like to get involved in the mission and in the movement of changing work from the inside out, you can visit us at changingwork.org. If you sign up, you get 30 days free with your membership. And you'll get a chance to actually convene with us. I think coming up in about 2 weeks, we have our monthly gathering. So there's a lot of opportunities to connect with us in person. As Scott mentioned, also keep an eye out for the Changing Work Review. We're launching a podcast pretty soon. That book will be coming out in a couple months. There's a lot of goodness.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.